Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to rise above fear, especially during these interesting times, then do we have the Revolution Over Fear show for you. Today I'll be talking with Paul Selig, medium and author of many of my all-time favorite spiritual texts, including The Book of Freedom, I Am the Word, Beyond the Known Realization, and another favorite, Alchemy. That's just what I want to talk with him about today, about a revolution over fear, leaving the known behind, and preparing for a brave new world. So welcome back to the show, Paul. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready. Thank you, Michael.
Woohoo! So, Paul, please forgive me. Before we dive right into things, is this the end of the world as we know it?
I don't want to answer that. I mean, I'm just the channel. I take dictation. I want to say, as we know it, yes. As we know it, or as we've known it, or as we've decided it has to be, yes, because I think from everything that I'm getting, we're outgrowing the model that we've become so accustomed to. It's just like our clothes don't fit anymore. We're having to move into something new and different and challenging, and it's challenging because it's not yet known. That's what I get again and again and again. We're stepping into the unknown, and we actually have to befriend that, because I don't know that we get to go back to what we had in the ways that we've had it.
It's fascinating because probably the last time I spoke to you, I was back by Aspen. You had gone to Maui, but you weren't planning on being there permanently. You had just, in a sense, via Costa Rica, I believe it was, ended up in Maui from New York City. But here we are. Now I'm in Joshua Tree. You're out on the Hana Highway, and neither one of us gets to go back.
Well, it's still choice. I mean, I can go back to my life in New York, or a version of it, I suspect. And I had, in some ways, a perfectly good life in New York. It's what I knew. I was a lifelong New Yorker. And as you said, I was in Costa Rica when New York went into lockdown, and I couldn't go home. And I ended up here because a friend said, there's a tiny house, you can have it for a little while. And I moved into a little tiny house on a beautiful retreat center, in a place I'd never been. But the longer I stayed here, the longer, I began to get a sense of myself in a new way of being in the world. And it took. So it seems as if I'm staying. So yes, it's not what I planned at all.
And it's interesting because in a sense, this really jumps ahead of the whole conversation. So I don't want to fully jump that much, but we're talking about when you're in a new vibrational alignment, when you're in a new accord, you see the world differently. And yes, you could go back, but this new beingness, why would we?
Well, I suppose I don't know. The guides I work with are all about choice. We choose, we choose, we choose. And, I accept that. And I landed in a place where the old choices that I had and the way that I had lived my life suddenly weren't available to me circumstantially. And I began to have a very different experience just of being. And I do feel that the energy that I'm now, working with has supported me in stepping out of my comfort zone. And I'm grateful for that. And would I go back to the way that I had it? I don't think I would. I really don't.
Thank you. You talk about it being up to us. I've asked this question before, but I want to ask it again because I think it lays the groundwork for things today. Did we collectively choose all of the change and everything that's going on in the world right now?
Again, I'm just the channel. So, I mean, I can go to the guides with some of the big questions, but, Paul is grappling with the same confusion everybody else I know is. And if I were to say in certainty, yes, we collectively chose these circumstances, I don't know what I would get. Absolutely yes. I hear absolutely yes when I ask, but I'm going to speak, but not in the ways that you think. I hear that the circumstances convene to create opportunity, to create opportunity. The circumstances themselves are simply what they are simply what they are. How you choose to learn, how you choose to learn it, individually and collectively, indeed are up to you. Indeed are up to you when you are opportunizing this, and you are opportunizing this collectively, yes, to manifest change. So that's what I get.
Thank you. And for those who aren't familiar, that's the guides coming through you at this time.
Yeah, when I hear, I whisper the words as they come and repeat. So the transmission is the whisper, and I've been doing it this way, I suspect, so long. In the days before I was mic'd and nobody could hear me, I got used to this, and sometimes it goes direct, but usually I've got to be pretty receded. And here I'm speaking with you. It's like I'm sharing the front seat of the car with them. I can turn the wheel over when I'm doing a book or doing a workshop. It's like I climb into the back seat and I try to go to sleep. I'll peek up once in a while if I get nervous about what I'm hearing, but for the most part, I'm fairly well receded.
There's a teaching, recent teaching you did that I was reading before this,
Mhm.
called Revolution, and that's a lot of what I want to talk about today. And it said after introducing you, and a few things were said by the guides are like, okay, Paul, you can go take a nap now.
Yeah. I mean, they'll say that if I'm interrupting too much, if I'm concerned about the content or concerned about the quality of the transmission, they'll find ways to move me out of the way. I mean, there was one book that I was doing. I think it might have been the book of Mastery, which is, I guess, about 4 books ago or something more. At one point, they did this lecture and they said, nothing is real. And I went, okay, that's familiar. I've heard that before. And I let them go on. And the next morning, they continued the chapter and they said, and the lesson for the day is everything is real. And I completely panicked because they don't contradict themselves.
Yeah.
And I went, and the rules that I have with these books is I don't get to go back and change anything. So if they say it and it's in the recording, it ends up in the book. I mean, the only changes we've ever allowed have been a mispronounced word,
Mm-hmm.
efflugience to, something that sounds like it, or if I don't know the word, I'll stumble it out as best I can. So, yeah, I panicked. And then they said, Paul, go for a walk around the block and we'll just keep talking. And pretty much that's what I did. I just checked out and let them continue, what they had to talk about. It's not a great. The good news about how I work and that I can interrupt is that if I hear something that makes no sense or is of concern to me, I will have to ask for an explanation. And they will usually unpack my question.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll say, thank you for the question, we'll take this up later. And they'll usually get it in there. But I mean, that's the nature of this collaboration. I don't consider myself the author of these texts at all. I'm in many ways the stenographer. And that's a role I've grown accustomed to and I accept, and I'm grateful for it. Um, but it's not up to me to decide the content. It's up to me to be present for the dictation, and I that's how it's going to go.
Makes sense to me. So it's interesting when you said it's not up to. So I'm gonna
Hmm.
change course or tack a little bit to the side here. You say it's not up to me. Well, it begets the question: if we collectively chose this consciousness, this experience,
Hmm.
would the guide say it is up to us to decide whether we want it the easy way, I'll put that in quotes, or the hard way?
Again, I have to go to them. I'm not going to take this on. Some ways, yes. I hear in some ways, yes, what you're actually asking. What you're actually asking is how much authority you have. Is how much authority do you have in shifting the reality that you collectively share. In fact, you have great authority. In fact, you have great authority in supporting one another. If you begin supporting one another, learning through love instead of fear, you'll have a much easier transition. You will have a much easier transition with the pieces are in play. But the pieces are in play. How you play the pieces, how you play the pieces, how you listen to yourselves, how you listen to yourselves, how you confirm your reality, how you confirm your reality is up to you, is up to you.
Thank you, and thank you, guides. And I'm guessing we're going to dive into the guides quite a bit today based on this teaching,
Oh
if
yeah.
they're up for it.
I'm on my second cup of coffee. We'll see what we get.
That
Okay.
sounds good. It seems there's more fear today, Paul, collectively and as an individual than
Yeah.
ever. So the guides are talking about a revolution right now. What's the revolution that they're calling for?
They're not calling for a revolution, and I think the word revolution seems to imply a kind of violence, and I don't think that that's what they're talking about at all. I think it's a revolution in consciousness. I think it's a revolution which is a great change in how we've known ourselves and the rules of our world. because I think that they're being transposed. The guides I work with talk about, transposition, as in music. So
Yes.
they say any song can be played in multiple octaves into infinity. And, the octave or the reality that we've known, this is how they say it, has been informed by fear at the level that we don't even question.
Hmm.
It's like, you're born in the pool that somebody already peed in. You just sort of accept it. And this is the reality we share. And fear is going to be how we learn and how we operate. And the guides say, when you shift to what they call the upper room or the higher octave, that's, they say, already present. I mean, they say all of the octaves exist already. We just have to align to the higher.
Hmm.
When we align to that level of vibration, we're no longer aligning to fear because fear isn't operative there. And that's the big shift in consciousness. I mean, if I want to have my fear, and I often do, I can go right back down to the lower in a minute. What I'm learning through this time specifically is that doesn't have to be a requirement anymore, that there are other ways of being. And I'm so habituated to being afraid and to making my choices through fear that I don't even always know that I'm doing it. So the opportunity now, and if you want to say the revolution now, is to know ourselves in a different potential, because nothing can be claimed until it's first realized as potential. We won't do it.
Can you explain that? Nothing can be claimed until it's realized in potential, if I understood that right.
Well, everything's, if the guides say we're always ordering off of the menu that we expect. So if the menu that I've inherited is you can't trust people, you're not worthy of God, or whatever you want to call God, whatever those things are, I'm not going to apply those potentials to my life. They simply don't exist. And what I'm hearing now is, what we get to choose is beyond what we've been taught we're allowed prior. So, I mean, it's always probably been there. But, if somebody said to me a year ago, Paul, in a year you're going to be living in a rainforest in Maui and you don't even know how to drive, I would say, well, that's crazy. That's certainly never going to happen. And it seems to be happening. And I'm going, well, this is just fascinating. This is happening, but it wasn't on the menu. And suddenly it was. And suddenly living my life in a rather different way became a possibility. And once something's a possibility, it can be chosen. But we don't choose anything that's not possible. If you go shopping, you don't see what you want, you're going to have to go to another store, or you're going to settle for what's been there and what you expect to be there.
Thank you. There are a few interesting terms that the guides were using in this most recent teaching, and one of them, I might be misconstruing it, but it seems to fall in line with you being out on the Hana Highway without knowing how to drive yet, which is elastized potential.
Yes, I mean, they talk about that. They talk about, well, it's basically just what I was saying. I don't remember if they defined that, but they talk about the elasticity of consciousness. So, yes, the potential is I can learn how to drive like most people in the world. It's odd. I can channel. I don't know how to cook, and I don't know how to drive. And there are things that I've managed living in New York with taxis and takeout food and subways that I don't have to attend to, living by myself or with my little dog, out in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, until something's a possibility, until we sort of increase our capacity to hold the new, more than likely we don't do it. And I think a lot of what's happening these days is we're all being challenged because, when what we have counted on our whole lives suddenly no longer seems to be reliable in the ways that it were, we're often forced to grow beyond, the comfort of the known. I mean, it's challenging. My whole spiritual journey began when I was, 25, and I hit a wall that I couldn't get through.
Mm-hmm.
And everything began to change because I could no longer rely on the way I thought that things were supposed to be. And I began to look for something more, not because I thought it would be nice, but I had no choice. And this is, what happened. And certainly it was a process. But I think we're all in this funny place now. I mean, the guides have said this from the very beginning. If you If you think of your job as the source of your income, or as your partner as the source of your love, you're creating in some ways these systems which can fail. What happens if the job fails? What happens if the relationship ends? And it's actually when we move beyond those structures of certainty that we begin to have, I hope, a higher experience.
It's fascinating that you say that, because I was thinking about how we create simply by saying things like, I am afraid. And they talk about you accrue evidence. What you're
Yeah.
saying is we accrue evidence for whatever we declare.
Well, I think the guides talk about manifestation in somewhat different ways than I suspect others might. And they say they talk about, being in a chord, and they say ACCORD or ACHORD is on a piano, which is resonance. And they say it's not just, people who say, well, I want to manifest a better relationship or a better home or whatever people are trying to get. The guides say everything that you see and can imagine you're in accord with already. So you're already in resonance with this reality. And then there's individual creation, and then there's the collective, and the collective is also creating. So it's not like I created the war in the Middle East. The guides have said this, because I said, well, what does this mean? I didn't do that. And they said, no, you didn't, but your consciousness informs it. So how you hold anything in consciousness is how you relate to it or in co-resonance with it. So I don't even know what question I was trying to answer when I embarked on this. I need more coffee, but you can remind me.
That's okay. And you've given me a sub-direction to go first.
Mhm.
Let's make it more simple. The danger of saying, I am afraid.
Well, all that does is aligns you to fear. That's all it does. It's a choice. I am afraid is an agreement to fear. I mean, this isn't about spiritual bypassing and pretending you're not afraid if you are. I don't think that helps anybody. I think if I'm afraid of something, I have an opportunity to look at what the impulse is to be afraid, and perhaps the choice to align to it. So honestly, if I come out to the patio and there's a wild animal there that wants to eat me, I probably can go back inside. That's just basic self-preservation. It's not that I have to be frightened of going outside. So, how can I say this? Let me go to the guide. The idea of fear is what's the idea of fear? They're saying the idea of fear is what you're asking about, is what you are asking about. If you align to fear, if you align to fear, if you confirm it, you begin making choices in fear. You begin making choices in fear. The action of fear. The action of fear is to claim more fear. Is to claim more fear. Every choice made in fear. Every choice made in fear confirms more of the same. Confirms more of the same. Period. Period. And the same. Period.
So then I guess we have to talk about how to get to the upper room, because if one action in fear confirms more fear, which then makes another
Yeah.
action in fear, and so forth and so on, we have to figure out what's that monkey to put in the wheel.
Well, I think the way to look at this, I mean, I consider myself a radio. That's
Yeah.
how I work. The guides say we're all radios, and we're all playing a broadcast. If I want to play the broadcast of fear, that's what I've aligned to, and that becomes my reality. And we really do have the opportunity to choose something other. Now, the guides say the true self, or the divine self, or the God within, whatever you want to call it, is unafraid, doesn't know fear, exists beyond fear. And the guide's teaching is the realization of the true self. These aren't sort of tricks of getting out of a situation. They're ways of being where you're no longer aligning to the old. They make a real distinction, by the way, and I should mention this, between fear and what they call prudence. If you're
Thank you.
skating in a pond and the ice is thin, best not to skate. They used an example, I think, in that series that you're referencing, Revolution, which is if your neighbor says, there's a storm coming, best to put up your shutters, you're giving an opportunity. That's not being fearful, is to put up your storm shutters in a hurricane. You just want to, you're choosing that you don't want to get flooded. It's a basic thing. Prudence and fear are very different things. And I think at times people misconstrue that. They think they're being frightened when in fact they're being, you know, cautious or careful. And there are times, for example, swimming in a riptide probably isn't the best idea. There's nothing wrong with the ocean. You choose not to swim when you could get dragged away by the current. It's really that simple.
Particularly exactly where you are.
Yeah, exactly where I am.
So, on that note, you mentioned earlier that, well, it's interesting. Today, and I like making my interviews evergreen, but I'm going to assume that we're in this for the long haul. We've got COVID, we've got vaccinations, we've got all of these things right now that are, spiritually speaking, freaking us out, is the best way to put it. Is there a way that we can change the collective, change this experience, change the timbre of everything as an individual?
Well, I hear yes and no. Of course, your own experience. Of course, your own experience and how you want to reality and how you align to your reality is always born in consciousness. Is always born in consciousness. If you seek to be fearful, if you seek to be fearful, you will find evidence of fear. You will find evidence of fear. If you lift to the upper room, you'll have a new perspective. You will have a new perspective. Lift to the upper room means lifting to the upper room simply means you are moving beyond. You are moving beyond the perceived limitations that you have held prior. It's a level of vibration. It's a level of vibration that holds new answers, Anything can be lifted. Anything can be lifted to what we call the upper room, to what we call the upper room by one whose response is not predicated by fear, is not predicated by fear. You cannot lift to the upper room. You cannot lift to the upper room what you are frightened of, or what you seek to damn, or what you seek to damn. What you damn damns you back. What you damn damns you back. What you put in darkness, no matter what you think it is, no matter what you think it is, will call you to that darkness, will call you to that darkness. That is the teaching of co-resonance. To lift beyond fear. To lift beyond fear is to know the self anew, without the prior history. What you should feel or respond as, dictating what you do, or perhaps who you think you are, or perhaps who you think you are, the true self as you. The true self as you knows herself beyond fear, can claim the kingdom, which is the realization of the present one, which is the realization of the presence of the divine in all things, not just you like, not just the things you like or would approve of, but indeed all things, You wish to cherry pick what is of God, All things must be of God. All things must be of God, or one source energy, or nothing can be, The act of transposition. The act of transposition is an act of restoration, The true self as you. Restored to purview, lifting what she encounters, to her vibrational field, That is the claiming of the kingdom. That is the claiming of the kingdom, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. And I'm probably going to have to go to the guides a few times on this one in about a dozen different ways. So first off, there is a claim, God is, God is, God is. And I found this one incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about a virus, talking about a war, talking about whatever, and we talk about co-resonance, they mentioned everything is of God or nothing is.
Mm-hmm.
How does God is help us, well, it's a resonance, it's an attunement, help us to recognize the God is everything?
Well, what they're saying in the claim, God is what is always so. The guides say the denial of the divine is really the only problem we have, and it expresses as all things, which is the belief that we're separate from source and from one another, which is the source of our fear and our pain. So the claim God is, while it does operate as an attunement, it's really quite potent when you work with it, is claimed from the level that they call the upper room. It's not just parroting words. None of the guides' teachings are about that. They really are attunements that seem to be born in vibration. The spoken word holds the vibration of the intent, or that's part of the way that I understand it. So the claim God is a claim of restoration or realization of what is always so. So what you're not doing, the guides say, you can't make anything holy. It already is, but you can deny the hell out of the divine in what
Yeah.
you see. And, this isn't magical thinking as I understand it. Again, it's a claim of truth. Now, the guides say what is true is always true. Nowadays, people say, well, my truth is, and the guides will often say, well, that's your opinion. That's
Hmm.
perfectly fine. But what is true is always true. And the idea, God is, God is, God is, as they say it, is the realization of the inherent divine in manifestation. Now, they say there's one note played in the entire universe, one tone. They call it the word. That's one of the ways they describe it. I actually think they just sort of utilize that language in order to reclaim it in
Hmm.
some way. But they say this one note is actually in manifestation as all things.
Yeah.
And everything, consequently, is of this one tone or vibration, or you can say energy, and it's operating at different levels of vibration. So they say the process of alchemy is realizing the inherent divine that's manifest as anyone or anything you see, which is the process of reclamation. You're reclaiming the inherent divine. And that's what gets lifted to the upper room. It's when they say you can't lift the evil man to the upper room because you've made him evil. You've decided who he is. And in doing that, you align to that level of agreement or vibration. Again, the teaching, what you damn damns you back.
Thank you. So, would you mind sharing a claim to raise ourselves to the upper room?
Well, I mean, there's a series of them. The simple claim is, I am in the upper room. It's claimed, but you have to understand this. It's not claimed by the personality structure. The personality structure is who I think I am. The true self, which is what they teach, and they'll say this through the claim, I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth, which is, again, they say claimed at the level of the true self, the I am presence, if you wish. That's the self that can lift to the upper room. The sequence has been, I know who I am in truth.
Mhm.
I know what I am in truth.
Yeah.
I know how I serve in truth. I am free. I am free. I am free. I am in the upper room. Now, the books provide the context for these things. They're not magic words. They do have real affect, and most people, when they work with this stuff, can feel the energetic shifts that happen. It's been the case since the very first book. The guides say, the books work on two levels. There's the words on the page, which provide an intellectual context, but the real books are the energetic transmission that works directly with the readers. And that's the same as holds true in the workshops that they run through me. And, people can feel this stuff. If I didn't feel the stuff, I don't think I could do it. But that's what allowed me to trust this whole process. So the claim, I am free, I am free, I am free,
Mhm.
is what allows us to break out of the sense of limitation that we've been bound by, or to this lower vibrational field or octave with. I am free, I am free, I am free, spoken by the true self. Then I am in the upper room. And most people feel a big shift with this. It's quite something. I was surprised when this teaching came through. I've been surprised by all of them. After every book they've done, I think, well, that's all there is for them to say. And then they continue on. And I get my head blown apart a little bit more, and that's my process and my expansion.
Thank you. If you don't mind me asking, it seems like in the last teachings, they're preparing you for something, kind of body, mind, and soul, I could say.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. They said it in a live stream I did last week. They said, get ready. And I've been hearing, get ready. Things are changing. And I have to trust that it's productive. And I also am trusting a little bit, based on what I'm hearing, that it may not be terrifically comfortable for me. But every time they bring the teachings up a step, there's a transition I have to make personally to carry this. I'm not a spiritual teacher. You have a lot of those on your show. I'm this guy with this odd ability, and I have this ability to take this dictation. But other than that, I'm basically another guy on the bus, trying to do my best with this. But I do know that I can't carry or transmit something that I'm going to be refuting. It doesn't work for me. I couldn't do it. So I have to be in the process along with everybody else.
I may have to challenge you a little bit here, Paul,
Okay.
because I've seen your evolution at least over the last 5.5 years together, and
Hmm.
you are, yes, you are a translator, you are a speaker for the guides, but you
Hmm.
have had to expand your vessel and expand your vessel
Yeah.
further and further still, to a level that, to me, a teacher is somebody who's one step in front, who's a wayfarer, who's holding a light,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you are casting that light forward for people.
I show up as I can, and I show up as honestly as I can, And I was a college teacher for 25 years, and I loved every minute of it. I was good at it. And so there's a part of me that is a teacher, yes, but I don't carry the wisdom. When you ask a question that I can't answer, that's when I start channeling. If I could answer it, I just, rattle it off. But for the most part, I'm a medium. I work between the levels in order to reiterate it. I'm not knocking my own growth. I know I've grown through this, and I'm very grateful for the growth that I've had. The life that I'm beginning to live now is a real testament to the teachings. And because I was, talk about frightened. I've been as frightened as anybody I've ever met in my life. I would be very happy, probably being a hermit. And what I've experienced in the last year has thrown me more fully into my life and the idea of community and the idea of being open to new possibilities than I recall ever being. But I had to be challenged to do that. I had to be moved out of my comfort zone, and I think that's true for all of us. I don't think much happens when we continue to agree to the known or our habituated patterns or our ideas of who we are. So, I'm not knocking myself. I'm just aware that I look at my role as in service to what is coming through. When I work psychically, which is great fun for me, and I do a lot of it, I'm much more present there. If you want me to tune into somebody, or I can do all that, and I'm quite effective. I have a practice, but then I get to interpret information and feelings. When I'm channeling, my job literally is to stay out of the way and take the dictation. You know, I'm not one of those. I can't go. I mean, the rule is I don't get to change it. And now everything's recorded, so there's hundreds of people listening to these things. They're going to find it if I switch the
Yeah.
words around. I can't do it, and I don't want to, because then it's not my book to change. It's not my lecture to figure out. I can't plan it. I can just show up and trust that there's water in the pool each time I dive.
Thank you. From there, I want to dive into the guides a little bit, because
Uh-huh.
Jessica and I were doing your readings beforehand, and it became very clear. I think Jessica actually mentioned it first. She goes, "I wonder what the guides want us to talk about today. What do the guides want us to know right now?"
Let me see. The young man wants to know one thing. The young man wants to know one thing. What will make an effective interview? What will make an effective interview? That's his agenda. That's his agenda. We are happy with this if he wants it. We are happy with this if he wants it. What's effective may not be necessary, but what's effective may not be necessary. What in fact is necessary? What in fact is necessary is how you know yourselves, is how you know yourselves, how you know the divine in yourselves, how you deny the divine in yourselves and others, and consequently others, which is the source of your pain. Now to rely upon the old, to rely upon the old to get you what you want or think you can, to get you what you want or think you should have, will perpetuate the old, will perpetuate the old. You all stand at a juncture. You all stand at a juncture. Things can be as they were. Things can be as they were. You can modify your behavior slightly. You can modify your behavior slightly, perhaps get a slightly better outcome, or you can transform the lives you live now. The lives you live now are begging for transformation, are begging for transformation. You find yourself in a frightening place. You find yourself in a frightening place. You will not get out of this place. You will not get out of this place by being fearful, but by having faith, Now, true faith, we would suggest. Now, true faith, we would suggest, is the reliance of the presence of the divine in the face of fear, in the face of challenge, not an abstract idea of God, not an abstract idea of God, but the source of all things, but the source of all things that has to be known, that asks to be known. You are invited to know the divine. You are invited to know the divine, but you must be willing to see what you get. But you must be willing to receive what you get. It may not look like you want. It may not look like you want, or give you what you think you should have, or give you what you think you should have. The claim God is. The claim God is the claim of actualism, is the claim of actualization, to know the self and worthiness of this. To know the self in worthiness of this is your opportunity, is your opportunity to contribute to the whole. No one is unworthy. No one is unworthy. Or of the source of all things. You are of the source of all things. This is the topic we like. This is the topic we like because it is relevant. Because it is relevant. Perhaps it's not what you want. Perhaps it is not what you want, but we'll not tell you. But we will not tell you how to conduct an interview. How to conduct an interview. You're a master. You are a master at your craft. At your craft, we are masters of our own. We are masters of our own, period. And they're saying period.
Well, it begets an interesting question, Paul, and I have no idea how to phrase this. But I'm working on a white paper right now with Dr. Irvin Laszlo. I think I mentioned him last year, two-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee, and we're looking at a different way of structuring a political strata so that there is a desire of the we over the me.
Yes. I get accurate.
And that is the question that just keeps coming in my mind day after day after day is well, I look at the stock market, for instance, and the stock market is a me over the we, and it's a short term over the long term. And the question that keeps coming to me, and the question, I guess, for the guides, when we're looking at understanding, okay, the known has been ripped out from underneath us by our collective choice, and we can try to put it back in place. You could try to go back to New York City. I could try to go back to Aspen right now. But what is the driver that says it's good to step forward, or we want to step forward, or to lean into this?
Well, I hear we're allowed to step forward. It's the first step is the first step. Most don't know that they're allowed not to break the rules. They're not allowed to break the rules. The challenge for most of you is that you don't know who you are and consequently you can hold, and consequently what you can hold. You play the small self well. You play the small self well because it's all you have known, because it's all you have known, and you're frightened of yourselves, and you're frightened of yourselves, your own potentiality to resurrect, to be renowned beyond the idea of self, beyond the idea of self that you've so chosen, that you have so chosen and become accustomed to, reliance upon the new, acceptance of the unknown, where your answers may build, where your answers may be held, will grant you new opportunity, to revert to the old, to try to fix the broken roof, will not always work. In this case, it will not. At times, the building needs to be raised. At times, the building needs to be raised. New potential needs to rise. Not just damaging, damaging the old again and again and again through your own reliance on fear to give you what you have. Your own reliance on fear to give you what you think you should have, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you, guys. So let's go real world, whatever that means, 101.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning. You've been doing the work. Something hits you. Oh, my God. I got to figure out how to drive to Hana today. Everything's closed in Kahului. Who knows what? Yeah. And this wave of fear hits you.
Yeah. I had a day like that yesterday. It wasn't a fun day. But what I kept doing was sort of seeking confirmation for my fears. The guides say we're always getting what we expect, whether we know it or not, or what we agree to at a certain level. And what that means is, even the person who says my life never works is going to find confirmation for that claim. And if I want to choose to be fearful, I can have that, and I'll accrue all the evidence that I need. If I want to start looking for villains, I'll find them behind every tree. It's just not necessary, but we're so accustomed to this that we continue to claim it. So if the question is, well, what do we do when this happens? I
Yes.
can ask that. The answer is very simple. The answer is very simple. Stop agreeing to it. Stop agreeing to it. Stop seeking confirmation. Stop seeking confirmation of the dark result, the fearful action, the fearful action, the tempting fear that would invite you to listen to it, that would invite you to listen to it. Again, the action of fear. Again, the action of fear. To claim more fear is to claim more fear. Look at your lives. Look at your lives. See what you claimed in fear. See what you have claimed in fear, and what has chosen for you, and what it has chosen for you by nature of agreement, by nature of your agreement. Period. Period.
Thank you. By nature of your agreement. What is the agreement we are walking around with right now?
That I should be afraid. That's the agreement to fear. That's what I get. Now, again, fear and prudence are two different things. There are times to be prudent. If it's freezing, in my home, I might want to close the windows and put on a sweater. That's prudence. I don't have to say, time to let the elements take me. That's not what this teaching is. Let me ask what the best answer is for this. The young man wants to know one thing. They're saying the young man wants to know one thing. How do we stop being frightened? How do we stop being frightened? By choosing something other. By choosing something other. And the other that you can choose. And the other that you can choose is the active presence. Is the active presence of the divine in the face of fear. In the face of fear. To align to the presence of the divine. To align to the presence of the divine. God is, God is, God is. God is, God is, God is. Refutes the darkness. Refutes the darkness, denies the fear, denies the fear. Now, this is not foolhardy. You still have integrity. You still have integrity in all of your choices, Don't drive on the wrong side of the road. Don't drive on the wrong side of the road, saying God is, God is, God is, saying God is, God is, God is. Stay in your lane, stay in your lane. Be aware that you share the road with others, that you share the road with others, that this is a collective experience, that you're choosing to learn through, that you are choosing to learn through, but to refute the divine. But to refute the divine, which is the action of fear, is where you rest, and where you stay frightened, and where you stay frightened. Choose the other. Choose the other. You may learn from the other more readily. Period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. I'm thinking of not too far from you by Paia. I used to swim all the time, and there are known to be sharks in the area. You would go in a state of non-fear. There was only one person in the years that I swam there who got bit by a shark. He had chopped up live bait in his hands at the time. But it's interesting, that concept of prudence. We're not talking about putting live bait in and saying, I'm coming from a state of love, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions, pretty heavy ones, I've been curious about for a long time that I'm wondering if the guides can answer today. And first off, when I look at everything happening around us, I think of this as a cosmic setup. And by a cosmic setup, I mean it's here to help us.
Yeah.
Why? Why is it this world is set up this way for us to have to go through these trials and tribulations and forget our true self in order to come back to our true self?
I'm not going to go there. I'll let them if they want to. We would like to answer this. We would like to answer this. It's choice. Yes, it's choice. Yes, but it's all collective agreement. But it's also collective agreement, how you choose to learn, how you choose to learn the information. And the information that you've received thus far, that you have received thus far as a collective has in many ways condoned separation, has in many ways condoned separation. And moving beyond that now, you are moving beyond that now. Now you cannot be separate in the higher way. Now you cannot be separate in the higher way. The true self that you truly are, the true self that you truly are, knows itself in union with the vastness of the Creator, with the vastness of the Creator. It's the individual self. It is the individuated self who denies the divine, because she's been taught to be fearful. Because she's been taught to be fearful, he has chosen to deny it. He has chosen to deny it to confirm his will. His will at the cost of the collective, at the cost of the collective. Now unified will, which is something we teach, is a level of co-resonance, the braiding of the will, the small self's will in its higher state, braided with the divine, integrated with the divine in agreement to its true nature, in agreement to its true nature, claims a different world, claims a different world. The divine as you, the divine as you does not come at the cost, does not come at the cost of an identity, It reclaims the identity. It reclaims the identity that you have known in a higher octave or state, in a higher octave or state, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you, Paul. Now I'm getting really excited because I'm not sure exactly where to go with this, but now we're getting to me the really, really cool stuff here on a personal level, which is when one thinks of buying a share, we tend to think of it as an individuated share. We're thinking of the reward for me versus the reward for the many. What they said is unified will not come at the cost of an identity. You're actually reclaiming it at a higher octave. That thinking of the we over the me is actually raising your vibration, very layman's terms here, to a higher level.
Great. I hear accurate.
Which, in a sense, if we can grasp this concept, there's a term that I use called +1, which means if every decision that you make, you are thinking about one other person when you make that decision. You go for the last burrito in the store and knowing you've already put 5 or 6 in your basket, if you leave at least one for the other guy, now you're starting to think beyond the individuated self.
Yeah. Yes and no. They're saying yes and no. The motives are important. The motives are important. Trying to be a good person, leaving what you need doesn't help anybody, doesn't help anyway. Knowing that it can be left because there will always be more, because there will always be more, that the source of all things is present always, that the source of all things is present in all ways, will contribute more to the whole than your idea of self-sacrifice, You live in the overflow. You live in the overflow, the awareness of the presence that flows as and through you, and is available to everyone else, and is available to everyone else. There is nothing outside of God. There is nothing outside of God, and your belief in scarcity, again, is another one. Again, is the denial of the divine. There will be no more left. There will be no more left. Is an act of fear. To trust that there is more. That the source may present as all things. Will escalate your frequency, because you're not denying source. Because you are not denying source. Period. I get period.
All right, we're gonna play with this one. Thank you, guides. So on the one level, what I hear saying is God is. That all of this is working out exactly as it should. The fact that if you grab the last burrito, it's all good because God is. Conversely, there becomes the question of if I take that to an illogical conclusion, going with the prudence concept here, then I go drive my gas guzzler down the road and say God is.
No, I understand where you're going, but that's not, I think, what they're saying at all. I think that they're talking about the belief in scarcity.
Yes.
Is again a confirmation of separation or the denial of the divine. I think it's really that simple. So they're all about prudence, I have to say. But let me see if they want to comment. I should have had like a two pot of coffee for this conversation. Let me see what they want to say. The young man wants to know something different. The young man wants to know something different. What is he allowed to hold? What is he allowed to hold and not be selfish and not be selfish? Selfishness is the denial of others' need. That is very true. To choose not to be selfish, to share what you hold. To share what you hold is always in benefit, but to deny the divine by saying there will not be enough, by saying there will not be enough if I don't do this, contributes to the idea of scarcity. If you choose to give something to another, because you are guilty, you are not giving in a highway, period. They're saying period.
Thank you. Is there more that we get to understand about lack and scarcity? Because if we turn on the news, what I call the negative worthless stimulation, they will tell us left, right, and center, whether it's a vaccine and not a vaccine, or who's getting sick or who's getting healthy, of what's going on with the economy. We are being trained in a lower octave of fear on lack right now.
Well, I think, you can address anything at whatever level you want to. So I can say, I'm 59 years old. I'm still single. I'm never going to meet anybody. It's not going to happen. Look at all the data that suggests and confirm my reality, and then be able to sort of pat myself on the back for, not getting what I want, or confirm that. That's my choice as much as anything else, and that is limiting the divine, what can be available, what can be known. So I think we're always in accord with this stuff. And this isn't about the news, it's really about collective belief. We live in a world where success is defined in certain ways. One of the guides' claims is, I know how I serve. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, I know who I am and I get what I am of the divine, but I don't know how I serve. It's because everybody's asking about their careers, because we live in a culture that defines us through what we do and how that presents to the outside world. It's a very limited way of operating, but that's not what they're talking about. So I think we go into these agreements unknowingly about what should be, whether it's what we hear in the news. And, depending on what news you get, what you get your source from, you're going to get a very different reality these days, it seems. So, I think the idea of truth, and unchangeable truth, which they say is the divine, is a higher way to go. But that's me, and I don't tell other people what to do.
Thank you. I want to dive into for a minute then, sorry you haven't had your second pot of coffee yet, how do I serve? Let's redefine that for people, because we are in a society where you are what you do, and if you don't, you're not.
The guides say, and it's been asked many times, so I know the answer, how one serves is how one is most fully expressed as the true self that they are. Now, the true self doesn't mean your authentic idea of yourself. Your true self is the divine that expresses as and through you. It's the God within and its expression as and through, which means you become an expression of this source in all ways. They say, in the upper room, you actually end up at a level of vibration where you can sort of translate reality through that, which means you become a bit of a gateway. It's a much bigger teaching. It's in the last book, Alchemy, and in the book that's coming out next, which is The Kingdom, where they really get into this stuff. It's trippy stuff, and it's stuff that I wasn't prepared for at all when it began to come, but it was seeded through all the prior books. So finally, how one serves is how one is most fully expressed. But that doesn't mean my true self is a potter, I need to be throwing pots. That's a way that you express, and that may be a way that the true self shows up in the world, but who you truly are, Michael, is an expression of source. And the realization of that, which is the knowing of that, is how you serve, because then that's what you bring to every encounter.
Thank you. And then please forgive me again for asking. You brought up a couple interesting terms. The second, I'm more familiar than the first. What does it mean to become a gateway?
It's a big teaching. I should probably try to get yes, please. I'm getting yes, please. So I'm going to go to them. We would like to answer this differently than you think. We would like to answer this differently than you think. Indeed, you're in operation. Indeed, you're in operation at a level of vibration that confirms reality, that confirms a reality. When you lift to the upper room, when you become acclimated there, the vibrational field you hold transmits itself to what it encounters, The idea of lifting the upper room, the idea of lifting to the upper room, or lifting what you encounter in the upper room, or lifting what you encounter to the upper room, in fact, happens immediately. In fact, happens immediately through the resonant field. In some ways, you become a portal. In some ways, you become a portal intermediary, if you prefer, between the levels of vibration in the world. In the world, but not of it. The realization of the divine. The realization of the divine as who and what you are, as who and what you are, cannot be contained by an individual, cannot be contained by an individual. You begin to realize the world as such. You begin to realize the world as such. To realize is to know. To realize is to know. When you know your true nature, when you know your true nature, I am of source. I am of source. You cannot deny anybody else. You cannot deny it in anybody else. It's simply not possible. It's simply simply not possible. Again, you cannot be the light. Again, you cannot be the light and hold another and hold another in darkness. You lift what you encounter. You lift what you encounter by nature of being, not through actions. You take not through actions. You take. You become the conduit or expression. You become the conduit or expression of all things, and you perceive all things, and you perceive all things as of the whole, as of the whole. That is how the kingdom is anchored. That is how, yes, the kingdom is anchored in this manifest plane, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. And would you mind, you can go to either way, kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
They brought up the
Yeah.
word kingdom. You brought up the word kingdom. How do they define that?
Yep. The kingdom is the realization of the presence of the divine in all things. That's it. It's the opposite of denying the divine. That's all. It's and again, I think that they use the old language. Yes, we do, but we do it. They're saying yes, we do, but we do it intentionally to reframe it, recategorize it beyond religious teaching. Period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. At the end of your last teaching, the guides suggested, there we'll go with that word, suggested that there was a big teaching coming up on grace.
Yeah, well, that's the name of the next series. I don't know how they're going to teach it. I mean, I really don't know. I know the title of the series. I show up and I hope that they reference the title, and they do every time. But a lot of what they've been teaching recently is about moving to a level of receptivity where your needs are being met, where you're not trying to conjure and fix and, use God basically to get your needs met as the small self. It's moving to a whole other level of alignment or receptivity. I don't know that that's what they're going to teach or not. I know that that's a big part of the teaching of the last book, is, moving to a level of agreement where you become the conduit and you're not sort of telling the divine what you should have every minute, which is assuming that you're not already connected and party to that awareness.
It's interesting when you think about it that way. It seems like it is the opposite of the law of attraction, because the law of attraction is assuming that there's something that you need to get versus going to a level of vibration where you know that everything is there for you already.
Yes, I don't know that it's the opposite, but the guides are teaching co-resonance, and co-resonance is attraction. I think it's the guides have been talking about this for years. They say, there's nothing wrong with a house on the hill. Somebody gets to live there.
Right.
But why do you want it? And much of what we want or think we should have is really born of the personality structure. And those desires are informed by the collective. I should be thin. I should be this. I should be that. And we can all continue to operate that way. But I don't think that that's what the teaching is about. So yes, you move to a level of agreement with Source and you become the expression of it, and you're basically living in the overflow. This is how I hear it. But is this what they're going to be teaching in their series? I have no idea. I won't know till I open my mouth,
Can we ask them what grace means to the guides?
The realization of the presence in action, not through conjuring, but through knowing, True knowing is grace. True knowing is grace. You're always in grace. You are always in grace when you know, and when you know you're unafraid, and when you know you are unafraid. To be unafraid, and to be in agreement with the source of all things, and to be in agreement with the source of all things is grace, and embodiment is grace and embodiment. You are simply being in agreement to who and what you are, to who and what you are in the presence of the divine, in the presence of the divine, which is indeed all things, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. Maybe have just a couple more questions before I do that. Where can people go, Paul, to find out more, to get your courses, your latest book, Beyond the Known Alchemy, and everything you have to offer?
It's just my website, which is, paulselig.com, paulselig.com. And people can find me on Instagram. I have an author page on Facebook. We announce these things there, but the website's the best place.
Thank you. And what is on your heart, would you say, right now?
I'm in this funny place right now I'm in the midst of enormous life change. I have most days where I'm just so grateful that I can experience this. And I try my best not to move into my old pattern of worry, which is reductive and brings me right back down. So what's on my heart and mind right now is this sense of enormous potential and opportunity that's come through challenge. And, as long as I can continue to look at challenge as opportunity, I suspect I can continue to move through this with a level of grace, and I feel right now that that's been present, and I'm very thankful for it, but I don't know what tomorrow brings. I can only just say, okay, here we go.
There's an REM song from maybe 30 years ago. 30 years ago. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
And I feel fine. Exactly right. Yeah.
Any last words that you want to share, or that the guides would want to share about the end of the world as we know it?
It's only an end to an agreement of what was. That's all it is. That's all it is. The new seeks to be born. The new seeks to be born. Let it be born. Let it be born. Let yourself be born into it. Let yourself be born into it. Stop damning your neighbors. Stop damning your neighbors. Stop agreeing to fear. Stop agreeing to fear. Stop denying the divine. Stop denying the divine, and all will be well, and all will be well, period. And they're saying period.
Thanks. And last, I'm surprised I'm going to ask this, but why not? And if they don't want to answer, that's fine. Do the guides have any words of wisdom for Jessica and myself at this point?
Accept where you are. Accept where you are. Accept this is a step on a path. Accept that this is a step on the path, and the new will be revealed. And the new will be revealed as you walk it. As you walk it, period. I hear period.
Thank you. Thank you, guides. Thank you, Paul. This has been phenomenal. I don't know if I shared with you last time. Right now, I have our new pet. He's been with us since August 9th, but he's sleeping in the Tesla because that is his place of choice, because his job is, in his opinion, to protect us no matter what. And so if he hears me on a Skype call, he goes crazy. We have a pet rooster.
Okay.
And I carry him everywhere. It looks kind of like a little bit like I'm a nutter, but he is the coolest animal I've ever experienced in my life, and I'm hearing the roosters behind you, and it feels so, so good.
I'm glad.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get beyond the known alchemy, and begin attuning to a higher room today, and shine bright. Woohoo! If you're like me, you're going to need to go back and listen to this interview again and again to get all of the wisdom from Paul Selig and his guides, all of the wisdom that you can glean out of this. I know I certainly will. On that note, if you'd like to learn how to channel your own guides, you can do so through AWE, the automatic writing experience. You can get our book on Amazon now. It's called AWE, A-W-E, the automatic writing experience, where you turn your journaling into channeling. You can also get the electronic, video-based program at automaticwriting.com, where we have live classes to teach you how to turn your journaling into channeling and tap into your own guides as well. To find more incredible shows, be sure to click here, hit the subscribe button below, and click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, live events every Sunday night with me. Comments if you got them, big thumbs up if you like this, share with everybody you know, and above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you, Paul. Thank you, guides. Thank you, everybody, for watching.